Welcome to the Sleepy Brain Dose. Tonight, we wander into the mysteries of consciousness, the mind, memory, and dreams. Here, science flows gently, like a quiet stream, guiding your thoughts into calm curiosity. Settle in, breathe slowly, and let the questions of the mind become a soft path toward rest. When we speak about consciousness, we enter one of the oldest and most delicate questions that human beings have ever asked. You may notice that simply hearing the word can bring a quiet sense of mystery. Consciousness seems to be both the most familiar aspect of life and at the same time the hardest to explain. It is always present, like the steady rhythm of your own breath, and yet when we try to describe it with precision, the words begin to dissolve into vagueness. This paradox is what makes the study of consciousness so endlessly fascinating. At its simplest, consciousness can be described as the state of being aware. It is the experience of sensations, thoughts, and feelings. It is the gentle noticing of the world around you, and the equally gentle awareness of your inner world. Right now, as you listen, you are aware of the slow unfolding of words, of that softness of sound, and perhaps of the way your own body is resting. That simple act of noticing is already consciousness in motion. It does not need to be forced or produced. It is always here, flowing like a quiet current. Scientists and philosophers often try to define consciousness in more technical ways. But for this calm exploration, we can stay with the intuitive sense of it. Consciousness is the light of awareness. That makes any experience possible. Without it, there would be no perception of colors, no feeling of warmth, no recognition of a thought. Consciousness is not the things themselves, not the image of a tree, not the sound of a voice, but the open space in which these experiences appear. Like a soft darkness in which lights may flicker, consciousness holds every perception and every thought, without itself being fully grasped. Many traditions have tried to describe consciousness using metaphors. Some call it a mirror, reflecting whatever comes before it. Others describe it as a kind of background canvas, upon which the images of experience are painted. In more modern language, we might speak of consciousness as a process of information integration or as patterns of neural activity. But behind every metaphor, there remains the same gentle mystery, the undeniable fact that you are aware. Right now, in this moment, when researchers study consciousness, they often divide the idea into levels. There is the basic level of being, awake and responsive, as when you open your eyes in the morning and recognize the world around you. Then there are deeper levels of self-awareness, the recognition not only that something is happening, but that it is happening to you, that you are the subject of the experience. And beyond that, there are subtle states, such as the reflective, awareness that can notice itself, as in moments of meditation. These layers remind us that consciousness is not one single thing, but a spectrum of ways of being aware. It is also worth noticing that consciousness has qualities, not just levels. At times, awareness feels sharp and bright, as when attention is focused on a demanding task. At other times, it feels soft and diffuse, like a gentle glow that surrounds rather than pinpoints. In moments of relaxation, the boundaries of consciousness can blur, allowing thoughts and sensations to flow more slowly, more freely. In this way, consciousness resembles the rhythm of breathing, sometimes strong and clear, sometimes subtle and barely noticeable, yet always present. Another way to approach the question is to ask what consciousness is not. A machine can process information without being conscious. A reflex in the body can trigger movement without awareness. Consciousness is not mere activity. It is the felt presence of activity. You can imagine a clock that ticks away, calculating each passing second. A clock performs a function, but there is no experience of time inside the clock. In contrast, when you listen to the ticking of a real clock in a quiet room, you are aware not only of the sound, but of the way it feels to notice it. That simple difference captures something essential about what consciousness means. Because consciousness is so intimate, it is easy to overlook its strangeness. You may close your eyes and find that images rise and fall in your mind. You may sense emotions, subtle shifts of mood, or the weight of memory. All of these appear in consciousness, without your needing to command them. They arise and fade like clouds in a sky. And yet the sky itself, the open field of awareness, remains. It does not seem to age or to belong to any single thought. It is always here, quiet and available, no matter how the contents shift. Leads to one of the great puzzles. Is consciousness something the brain produces, or is it something more fundamental? Some scientists argue that consciousness is the result of billions of neurons exchanging signals in complex patterns. Others suggest that consciousness might be a basic feature of reality, not reducible to physical parts. Both views continue to be explored, and neither has reached a final answer. For our purposes, what matters is that consciousness, however it arises, is the gentle field within which every moment of experience becomes possible. If we look back through history, we find that different cultures have spoken about consciousness in their own ways. Ancient Indian philosophy called it the witness, the pure awareness that observes all phenomena. In Greek thought, philosophers reflected on the soul as the principle of awareness and life. In modern times, psychology and neuroscience have developed more detailed models, measuring brain activity and correlating it with reported experiences. Yet across all these approaches, the core insight remains the same. There is something within us that knows, something that is aware of itself and of the world. In daily life, consciousness may feel ordinary, even unnoticed. When you walk down a familiar street, your mind may drift without effort, and yet consciousness is still present, quietly accompanying each step. When you pause to take a slow breath, you may sense the warmth of air filling your lungs, and consciousness is there, as the silent witness. Even in sleep, when consciousness seems to fade, it often returns in the form of dreams, weaving inner worlds that feel vividly real until morning. Consciousness is the gentle thread that ties together waking, dreaming, and the soft dark of deep. Rest. There is also a quality of unity in consciousness. No matter how many sensations or thoughts arise, they are all gathered into a single field of experience. You may feel the pressure of the chair, hear the sound of a voice, and notice a memory all at once. Yet somehow it is one continuous stream. This unity is not created by effort. It is simply the way awareness unfolds. It can be compared to a river where countless drops of water move together as one current. Each drop has its place, but the river flows as a whole. Philosophers sometimes call this the hard problem of consciousness. Why should physical processes in the brain give rise to experience at all? Why is there something it feels like to be alive rather than just mechanical functions with no inner light? Many theories have been proposed, from the idea that consciousness is an emergent property of complexity to the suggestion that it might be fundamental to the fabric of the universe. None of these ideas is complete, but reflecting on them can evoke a quiet sense of wonder. Perhaps the most gentle answer is to accept that consciousness is both deeply familiar and endlessly mysterious. For now, you might simply allow yourself to notice the fact of your own awareness. Without trying to define it, you can rest in the recognition that you are conscious in this very moment. The words reach you, and you are aware of hearing them. You may also be aware of your breath, moving in and out with its natural rhythm. You may be aware of the softness of your body resting. These simple recognitions are already profound. They are the ground of everything else that will be explored. Consciousness, then, is not something distant or abstract. It is the immediate presence of experience itself. To ask what it is may be less important than to gently acknowledge that it is. In the same way that night is held by a soft darkness, and every star is seen within that darkness, every perception and thought is held within consciousness. It is the quiet backdrop that allows life to unfold. And in acknowledging it, you may feel a subtle sense of calm, as if recognizing something both ordinary and infinite at once. This is where our journey begins, with the simple, profound awareness that we call consciousness. Always present, always open, always mysterious. Like the rhythm of breath, like the softness of night, it is here, holding every moment in its quiet embrace. When we turn our attention to the brain, we are looking at one of the most intricate structures in the known universe. It weighs little more than 1.5 kilograms, yet within its folds lies the power to sense, to remember, to imagine, and to feel. It is here that billions of nerve cells send tiny pulses of electricity, creating patterns so complex that they give rise to the experience of a whole world. And yet, when we gently step back, we can see that the brain is not just a biological organ. It is also the stage upon which awareness itself unfolds. You might imagine the brain as a vast landscape, full of delicate pathways. Each cell, or neuron, reaches out with branching arms, making contact with thousands of others. The rhythm of their signals is measured in thousandths of a second. Together, they create the slower, more continuous rhythm of perception. Just as waves on the surface of the ocean form from countless drops of water, awareness emerges from the vast orchestra of these cells communicating. The mystery is not simply that they fire, but that their activity is accompanied by experience. The feeling of seeing, hearing, or remembering. Different regions of the brain are gently specialized. At the back of the head lies the visual cortex, quietly processing patterns of light into shapes and colors. Near the ears are auditory regions, which turn vibrations in the air into the perception of sound. At the top, in the parietal lobes, signals from the skin, muscles, and joints are woven into the felt sense of the body. In the front, the prefrontal areas allow reflection, decision, and the weaving of thoughts into plans. None of these regions alone can create consciousness, but together, their activities are synchronized, and in this synchronization arises awareness. One striking feature of the brain is that it is always active. Even in sleep, waves of neural activity ripple through its networks. At first, scientists thought that the brain at rest was mostly idle, but more recent discoveries have shown otherwise. There is a network called the default mode network, active when the mind drifts, when we reflect on ourselves or imagine possibilities. This background hum is like a soft undercurrent of thought and feeling, flowing even when no task demands attention. Awareness seems to accompany both the focused activity of problem-solving and the diffuse wandering of daydreams. It is gentle to notice that the brain and consciousness are not in competition, but in harmony. The brain provides the structure, the pathways, the rhythm of signals. Consciousness is the felt presence that arises within those rhythms. One without the other would not be what we recognize as human life. When the brain is injured, awareness may fade or change. When the brain is stimulated, experiences may be altered. This intimate link reminds us that, at least in our everyday lives, the brain is the gateway through which awareness expresses. It's self-taught, and yet the connection is not simple. For instance, the brain can carry out many functions without conscious awareness. Reflexes, habits, even complex motor actions can be performed without much deliberate thought. When you walk along a familiar path, your feet may move with little attention. When you type a familiar password, your fingers may find the keys automatically. These actions show that the brain is full of hidden processes, many of which unfold beneath the surface of consciousness. Awareness is selective. It illuminates some parts of the brain's activity, while leaving others in the shadows. One of the mysteries scientists explore is how the brain binds to gather information into a single stream of awareness. Right now, you may hear words, feel your body resting, and sense the rhythm of your breath, and yet all of these are unified in one moment. The brain achieves this by coordinating signals across distant regions, using waves of electrical activity that rise and fall in synchrony. This synchrony is not something you need to control. It happens quietly, like the natural rhythm of night and day. Out of this coordination arises the gentle flow of a continuous self. Memory also plays a central role in the brain's relation to awareness. The hippocampus, a small curved structure deep within the temporal lobe, helps weave experiences into lasting patterns. Without memory, each moment would vanish as soon as it arose. With memory, the stream of consciousness gains depth, linking past and present. This is why awareness does not feel like a series of isolated flashes, but like a flowing river with continuity. You can sense who you are because the brain quietly preserves the thread of past experiences. Emotions, too, are deeply tied to awareness. Structures such as the amygdala and insula help generate the feelings that color experience. A sound is not just heard, it may feel soothing or unsettling. A thought is not just neutral, it may bring warmth or unease. These shades of emotion are part of what makes consciousness rich. They remind us that awareness is not simply cognitive, but also affective. It feels a certain way. Without emotion, consciousness would be flat, like an image without color. The brain provides the chemistry that brings these colors to life. It is important to acknowledge that awareness is not located in a single place in the brain. There is no one center, no solitary spark. Instead, it arises from patterns spread across networks. This is why damage to different regions may change awareness in different ways. A stroke in one area may affect vision, another may affect language. Still another may change personality. Consciousness is distributed, woven from the whole fabric of the brain. Just as a melody arises from many notes played together, awareness arises from many brain regions working in concert. Some researchers compare the brain to an orchestra. Neurons are like instruments, each producing its signals. The timing of their firing is the rhythm. The connections between them are the harmonies. And consciousness is the music that emerges, not in any one instrument, but in the pattern of all playing together. You may not notice the individual notes, but you experience the flow of the melody. In the same way, you may not notice each neuron's firing, but you live within the flow of awareness they create. Even with all this knowledge, the puzzle remains. How does electrical activity in the brain give rise to the felt quality of experience? How does a signal in the visual cortex translate into the vivid sense of blue or the gentle perception of shadow? How does a pulse in the auditory cortex become the rich sense of sound? Science has mapped the correlations, but the essence of how subjective awareness emerges remains mysterious. And perhaps, as we sit with this mystery, we may feel the same softness that accompanies other great questions. Not every puzzle must be solved to be appreciated. From a calm perspective, it is enough to recognize that the brain and consciousness are inseparable partners. The brain provides the structure, the pathways, the rhythms. Consciousness provides the experience, the light, the felt presence. Together, they make possible the world as we know it. And when you pause to take a breath, you can sense this partnership. In action, neurons fire, muscles move, air enters, awareness notices. Each step is biological, and yet each step is also lived, felt, and known. So when we ask about the brain and awareness, we are not asking about two separate things, but about one unfolding process seen from two sides. From the outside, it appears as patterns of activity in a living organ. From the inside, it appears as the soft flow of experience. Both are real, both are valid, and both are part of the same mysterious whole. As you sit with this reflection, you might notice the calm rhythm of your own thoughts. You might notice how awareness shifts, sometimes focusing sharply, sometimes drifting gently. Behind every shift lies the quiet activity of the brain, supporting, enabling, allowing. The relationship between the two is not a clash, but a harmony. Like the balance of breath in and breath out, like the rhythm of day yielding to night. And in that harmony, consciousness takes shape. Perception is the gentle bridge between the world outside and the awareness within. It is the ongoing flow that allows light, sound, touch, taste, and smell to become part of conscious life. Without perception, consciousness would be an empty openness. Without consciousness, perception would be mechanical signals without meaning. Together, they form the living rhythm of experience. When you open your eyes in the morning, light falls upon the retinas, tiny layers of sensitive cells. At the back of each eye, they respond not with images, but with patterns of electrical impulses. These signals travel along the optic nerves to the brain, where they are gradually transformed. What begins as scattered photons is slowly woven into the perception of color, shape, and movement. And yet you do not notice these steps. What you experience is the final image, the room, the light, the quiet sense of space around you. Perception is already smoothed and given to awareness as a whole. The same is true for sound. Vibrations in the air touch the delicate membranes of the inner ear, moving tiny hairs that convert motion into neural signals. These signals travel to the auditory cortex, where they become the sense of tone, rhythm, and voice. You may hear words or music, or the subtle hum of a distant machine, but you are never aware of the raw vibrations. What you experience is already the shaped perception. In this way, perception is like a translator, turning the language of the physical world into the language of experience. Perception is not static. It flows. Each moment of seeing, hearing, or touching is linked to the next, creating a seamless stream. When you watch a bird in flight, you do not see separate frames, but a continuous movement. This is because the brain integrates signals over time, smoothing them into continuity. In calm reflection, you can notice that perception is like a river, never frozen, always moving. Even when the world around you seems still, subtle shifts in light and sound continue to ripple through awareness. An important feature of perception is that it is selective. At any given moment, countless signals reach the senses, but awareness rests only on a few. You may be aware of these words, while the feeling of your feet or the hum of the environment fades into the background. This selectivity is not a flaw, but a function. It allows the mind to focus gently on what matters most in each moment. And yet, like soft darkness holding faint stars, the unattended signals are still present, ready to be noticed when attention turns, perception also carries with it interpretation. The brain does not present raw data, but meaningful patterns. When you see a tree, you do not experience it as mere colors and shapes. You see it as a tree with its trunk, its leaves, its familiar form. When you hear a voice, you do not just hear sound. You recognize emotion, tone, and intention. This interpretive quality makes perception richer, but it also reminds us that what we perceive is not the world exactly as it is, but the world shaped by our own nervous system. There is a rhythm in perception similar to the rhythm of breath. Attention moves outward to notice details, then inward to reflect. The eyes scan a scene, then pause to focus. The ears follow a melody, then drift into silence. This ebb and flow keeps perception alive and dynamic. You might imagine it as waves on the shore. Each wave a new moment of sensation, each retreat, a space for awareness to rest. Together, they form the endless tide of perception, always arriving, always receding, never still. Perception is also deeply influenced by memory. When you look at a face, you recognize it not because of raw features alone, but because memory quietly informs perception. When you hear a familiar song, past emotions color the present sound. This weaving of memory into perception creates the yi, sense of continuity in life. Every moment is both new and already shaped by what has come before. Awareness flows on the surface, while memory forms the gentle current beneath. Another subtle aspect of perception is its embodied nature. The brain does not receive signals in isolation. They are shaped by the body's posture, movement, and state. The way you feel hunger changes how you perceive food. The way your body is tired changes how you perceive effort. Even emotions flow into perception. Joy makes colors seem brighter. Sadness may make the same world feel muted. Awareness is not separate from the body. Perception is always embodied, always tied to the rhythm of living flesh. Perception is also active. The eyes move in quick saccades, scanning and selecting. The ears turn toward sources of sound. The hand reaches out to touch. We are not passive receivers of the world, but active participants, shaping what we perceive by how we look, listen, and move. This active quality adds another layer to the flow. Perception is not just input, it is interaction. The world and the perceiver dance together, each shaping the other moment by moment. From a gentle philosophical view, perception shows us that reality and awareness are inseparable. The world appears as it does because it is filtered through the senses and the brain. Yet awareness makes it vivid, meaningful, and alive. Without perception, the world would remain unrecognized. Without awareness, perception would remain unexperienced. The two are threads of the same fabric, woven together so tightly that we often forget they can even be distinguished. Consider for a moment the space between perceptions. In meditation or quiet reflection, one may notice the subtle gaps between thoughts or the stillness behind sensations. These gaps reveal that perception is not an unbroken wall, but a series of flowing moments. Just as night is not separate from day, but part of the same cycle, the pauses in perception are part of the flow. They give rhythm, contrast, and depth, like silence between notes in music. Without them, perception would lose its gentle texture. Science has studied perception through experiments and models, but the lived flow always exceeds the data. No chart or diagram can fully capture what it feels like to watch light shimmer on water, or to hear the slow rhythm of a heartbeat in the quiet of night. Perception is both biological and experiential, both measurable and mysterious. We can describe its mechanisms, but the calm presence of perception itself remains something to be lived. Not only explain that, as you listen now, you are part of this flow. Sounds reach your ears. The meanings form. Awareness receives them. Your body rests, your breath moves, sensations arrive and fade. You are not creating perception. You are simply within it, carried by its rhythm. This recognition can bring ease, a sense of safety. You do not need to hold on tightly. Perception flows naturally, like the tide. You can rest in its movement, knowing that awareness will carry you gently forward. The flow of perception, then, is the heartbeat of consciousness. It transforms the outer world into inner experience, moment by moment, without pause. It is selective, interpretive, embodied, active, and continuous. And in recognizing it, you may feel a quiet wonder at the simplicity and the depth of being. Aware, every breath, every sensation, every sound is part of this river. And as it flows, it carries you gently into the unfolding mystery of consciousness itself. When we speak of memory, we are speaking of one of the most intimate aspects of consciousness. Memory is the gentle thread that binds the present to the past, weaving together experiences into the story of a life. Without memory, each moment would stand alone, isolated, without connection. With memory, awareness feels continuous, like a river flowing steadily through time. It is memory that allows us to say, I am the same person today that I was yesterday. Even though every detail of the present moment is new, memory begins with perception, but it does not end there. Each sight, sound, or feeling leaves a trace, a subtle mark within the brain. Most traces fade quickly, like footprints washed away by the tide. Some, however, are strengthened, rehearsed, or emotionally charged, and these traces become lasting memories. This process is not mechanical, but deeply human. What we remember is shaped by what we notice, what we value, and what we feel. The warmth of a kind word may remain for years, while countless ordinary moments dissolve into quiet forgetfulness. Scientists often distinguish between different types of memory. Short-term memory holds information briefly, like the digits of a phone. Number repeated just long enough to dial. Working memory allows us to juggle thoughts in the moment, as when we solve a simple problem in our head. Long-term memory, in contrast, preserves experiences for days, years, or even a lifetime. These categories are useful, but in lived experience. Memory feels less like compartments and more like layers of a single fabric. Each layer supports the others, and together they create the texture of personal identity. Deep within the brain lies the hippocampus, a curved structure that plays a central role in forming new memories. When this structure is damaged, people may remain awake and aware, yet unable to create lasting impressions of new events. They may live in a perpetual present, with no bridge to what has just happened. This reveals how essential the hippocampus is for weaving experiences into the thread of self. Without it, awareness is present, but the sense of a continuous self is fragile and incomplete. Memory is not only about storage, it is also about reconstruction. When we recall a past event, we do not replay it like a recording. Instead, we rebuild it from fragments, guided by meaning and context. This is why memories can change over time, or why two people may remember the same event differently. Memory is creative, not fixed. It is shaped each time it is recalled, like clay softened and reshaped by the hands that hold it. Far from being a flaw, this flexibility allows memory to stay alive, adjusting to the present needs of the self. The link between memory and identity is profound. We recognize ourselves across time because memory connects the I of today with the I of yesterday. Without memory, There is no personal story, no continuity of character. This is why conditions such as dementia can feel so disorienting, not only because facts are lost, but because the sense of self becomes fragile. When memory fades, identity loosens. Yet even in such states, moments of recognition, of emotion, or of music can bring back glimmers of self, reminding us that identity is never entirely gone while awareness remains. Emotion plays a powerful role in memory. Experiences charged with feeling are more likely to be remembered. A joyful celebration, a painful loss, a moment of fear or wonder, these stay vivid long after ordinary days are forgotten. The amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure in the brain, helps attach emotional color to memories. In this way, memory is not neutral. It carries the hues of feeling, giving identity its depth and richness. Who we believe ourselves to be is not only a record of events, but also the emotional resonance of those events. Memory is also collective. While each person carries a private store of experiences, families, cultures, and communities share memories too. Stories, traditions, and rituals transmit a sense of identity across generations. When you recall a childhood song or a cultural celebration, you are not only remembering your own life, but stepping into the stream of collective memory. This shared remembering strengthens the sense of belonging, reminding us that identity is not only individual, but also communal. It is gentle to notice that memory is selective. We cannot remember everything, and in truth, we would not wish to. Forgetting is not a weakness, but a necessity. It allows the mind to release the weight of unneeded details and focus on what matters. In this balance between remembering and forgetting, the self takes shape. The remembered events form the outline of identity, while the forgotten create the space in which new experiences can enter. Memory is not a complete record, but a living selection, always changing, always adapting. Another subtle feature of memory is its role in imagination. The same systems that recall the past also allow us to envision the future. When you imagine what tomorrow might bring, you are drawing upon memory, recombining fragments of experience to create possibilities. In this way, memory does not only preserve the past, but also projects forward, shaping the story of the self yet to come. The self is both remembered and anticipated, held together by the creative flow of memory. Philosophers have long reflected on this link. Some have argued that personal identity is nothing more than a bundle of memories, that to be a person is simply to have a continuous chain of recollection. Others point out that identity must also include the present awareness, since memory without consciousness would be inert. Both views remind us that memory and the self are inseparable. Identity is not fixed, but flowing, carried forward by memory in partnership with awareness. From a calm perspective, this understanding can bring comfort. You do not need to hold on to every detail. It is enough to know that the essential threads will remain. You do not need to worry about the precise accuracy of every memory. It is enough to feel the continuity they provide. Memory supports the self, but the self is also more than memory. It is the living awareness that receives, remembers, and reflects. Right now, you can notice the way memory is present even in this moment. As you listen, the beginning of this sentence lingers while the end unfolds. Without this gentle retention, language would not make sense. Even within seconds, memory is at work, stitching together syllables into meaning. Stretch this further, and memory holds minutes, hours, days, and years. It is the same process, extended across time. Awareness is the field, and memory is the stitching that binds the field into continuity. In reflecting on memory and the self, we see that identity is not a solid object, but a flowing process. It is shaped by perception, deepened by emotion, guided by culture, and preserved by the brain. It is never finished, always in motion, like a melody carried forward by each new note. To be oneself is to be a story in progress, held together by the quiet work of memory. And in this recognition, you may feel a softness. Yourself is not something you must hold rigidly. It is already flowing, supported by memory, renewed with each breath. Just as the night sky holds both stars remembered and stars newly appearing, so too does consciousness hold a self that is both past and present. Memory is the bridge, and the self is the crossing, always moving, always alive. Dreaming is one of the most fascinating expressions of consciousness. Each night, as the body settles into rest and the eyes close, consciousness does not simply vanish. Instead, it flows into new forms, weaving inner landscapes of images, emotions, and stories. Dreams remind us that awareness is not limited to waking life. It is flexible, creative, and capable of painting whole worlds from within. In the soft rhythm of sleep, consciousness continues its journey. Sleep itself follows a repeating cycle. Within about 90 minutes, the body moves through stages of light sleep, deep sleep, and a stage called rapid eye movement sleep, or REM. It is in this REM stage that dreams are most vivid. The brain, though resting from the demands of the day, becomes highly active. The eyes dart beneath closed lids, as if following unseen scenes. Muscles remain still, held in quiet paralysis, while the inner theater unfolds. From the outside, a sleeper seems calm and motionless. On the inside, whole dramas of perception and feeling take place. The content of dreams can be as varied as life itself. Some are fragments of memory, replaying pieces of the day. Others are symbolic, weaving emotions into images that seem strange yet meaningful. At times, dreams are joyful, filled with lightness and creativity. At other times, they may carry unease, surfacing fears or tensions not expressed while awake. Whatever their form, dreams show that consciousness has layers, and that even in sleep, the mind continues to work, to feel, to imagine. Scientists have long studied the functions of dreams. One possibility is that dreams help consolidate memory. During sleep, especially REM sleep, the brain replays patterns of activity from the day. In this way, experiences are quietly woven into long-term memory. Another possibility is that dreams serve as emotional regulation. Difficult feelings may be rehearsed or softened in the safe space of dreaming. This may explain why events that feel overwhelming by day sometimes seem calmer by morning. Dreams allow emotions to be processed gently, without the sharpness of waking life. Dreams also reveal the creative side of consciousness. Freed from the strict logic of waking thought, the dreaming mind can combine fragments in new ways. Ideas may merge, images may transform, time may stretch or compress. Many artists and scientists have drawn inspiration from dreams, finding in them solutions or visions not reached by deliberate effort. But beyond creativity, dreams simply remind us of the fluid nature of awareness. They show that consciousness is not fixed but capable of endless forms, like water flowing into different shapes. One of the striking features of dreams is their realism while they last. Within the dream, you often do not question its reality. You may run, speak, or feel emotions with the same intensity as when awake. Only upon waking do you realize that it was all an inner construction. This highlights the closeness between dreaming and waking perception. Both are experiences held within consciousness. Both feel real while they are happening. The difference is not in the felt vividness, but in the source of the images. Waking perception is anchored in the outer world. Dreaming perception is generated from within. There are also special forms of dreaming, such as lucid dreams. In these moments, the dreamer becomes aware that they are dreaming while still within the dream. This brings a subtle shift in consciousness, blending the openness of dreaming with the self-reflection of waking awareness. Lucid dreams reveal that even in sleep, consciousness can turn back upon itself and recognize its own state. They remind us that awareness is flexible, able to expand and contract, to dream and to know it is dreaming. Not all dreams are pleasant. Nightmares can bring fear or distress, often reflecting unresolved emotions or memories. Yet even these have a role. They may help the mind confront challenges, rehearse responses, or release tension. Just as storms are part of the natural cycle of weather, unpleasant dreams are part of the cycle of consciousness. They do not break it. They remind us of its depth. And often, upon waking, the fear dissolves, leaving only the recognition that it was a passing image within awareness. From a broader view, dreams invite reflection on the nature of reality itself. If dreams can feel so real while being entirely internal, what does that suggest about waking experience? Some philosophers have wondered whether waking life might itself be a kind of dream, vivid and convincing, but held within consciousness. While science grounds waking perception in the physical world, the comparison reminds us that all experience, whether waking or dreaming, shares the same stage of awareness. The difference is not the presence of consciousness, but the patterns it holds. Dreaming also shows the independence of consciousness from deliberate control. In waking life, we often guide our thoughts, choosing where to focus. In dreams, images and events arise without our command. They unfold spontaneously, reminding us that much of consciousness is not under conscious direction. Awareness holds the dream, but does not dictate it. This surrender can feel unsettling, but it can also feel freeing. To dream is to allow consciousness to create on its own, without effort or will. In many cultures, dreams have been given special significance. Ancient traditions saw them as messages, windows into hidden truths, or journeys of the soul. Modern science interprets them more cautiously, as expressions of memory, emotion, and brain activity. Yet whether mystical or biological, the shared insight is that dreams matter. They are not random noise, but part of the deep rhythm of life. They remind us that consciousness is vast, extending beyond the narrow light of daytime awareness. Right now, as you reflect on dreams, you may notice the gentle link between dreaming and waking. Both are states of mind. Both are experiences within. Awareness. Each night you drift into dreams, and each morning you wake, carrying fragments with you. These fragments become part of memory, part of identity, part of the ongoing story of the self. Dreams are not separate from life. They are woven into its fabric. From a calm perspective, dreams can be appreciated simply as they are. You do not need to interpret every image or solve every symbol. It is enough to acknowledge that in dreams, consciousness continues to move, to process, to create. It is enough to notice the wonder of awareness that does not end with sleep. Just as breath continues in the night, consciousness continues in the form of dreams. So, dreaming is not a departure from consciousness, but a variation of it. It is the night rhythm of awareness, the soft play of memory and imagination. It shows that consciousness is not fixed to waking perception, but can flow into many shapes. And in recognizing this, you may feel a quiet reassurance. Even in sleep, awareness does not abandon you. It shifts, it changes, but it remains. Like the tide that rises and falls, Like the gentle pulse of breath, consciousness moves through waking and dreaming, holding you in its unbroken embrace. Consciousness is often spoken of as if it lived only in the head, as if awareness were simply the activity of the brain contained in the skull. Yet when we pause and notice, it becomes clear that the mind is not separate from the body. Every perception, every emotion, every thought is shaped by signals coming from the body and returning to it. The relationship between body and mind is not one of two independent entities, but of one continuous system, each side influencing the other in subtle and constant ways. At the most basic level, the senses connect body and mind. Vision begins with the eyes, hearing with the ears, touch with the skin, taste with the tongue, smell with the nose. These organs are parts of the body, yet they are also gateways of awareness. Without the body, there would be no access to the world. Without awareness, the signals would be meaningless. In this way, the senses remind us that consciousness is not suspended in space, but grounded in a living organism. The flow of information is not only from outside in, but also from inside out. Nerves carry signals from the heart, the lungs, the stomach, the muscles, and countless other systems. These signals give rise to interoception, the perception of the internal state of the body. You may notice your heartbeat, the rhythm of your breath, the sensation of hunger or fullness, the warmth of relaxation. All of these inner perceptions feed into awareness, shaping mood, attention, and thought. Even when you are not explicitly aware of them, they quietly guide the tone of consciousness. Consider how emotions are felt. Anxiety often comes with a racing heart, shallow breathing, and tension in the muscles. Calmness comes with slower breath, loosened shoulders, and warmth in the chest. These bodily changes are not separate from the emotion. They are part of it. The mind interprets signals from the body, and the body responds to signals from the mind, forming a loop. This is why practices like deep breathing or gentle movement can influence awareness so strongly. By calming the body, you calm the mind. By calming the mind, you calm the body. The nervous system plays a central role in this connection. The autonomic nervous system, which regulates functions such as heart rate, digestion, and sweating, has two complementary branches. The sympathetic branch prepares the body for action, increasing alertness and readiness. The parasympathetic branch restores rest and balance, slowing the heart and promoting digestion. Consciousness is influenced by the balance between these branches. When the sympathetic system dominates, awareness feels tense and vigilant. When the parasympathetic system takes over, awareness feels spacious and calm. The dance between these systems is part of the rhythm of life. Hormones also shape the body-mind connection. Stress hormones such as cortisol heighten alertness, while endorphins soften pain and bring pleasure. Oxytocin fosters feelings of trust and bonding, while melatonin signals the body to rest. These chemical messengers circulate through the bloodstream, influencing awareness in ways that are often subtle but profound. The mind does not float above the body. It is bathed in the chemistry of living tissue, moment by moment. Even memory and thought are embodied. The state of the body can shape how easily we recall information or how we interpret events. A tired body makes the mind sluggish. A nourished body gives clarity. A body in pain colors thoughts with difficulty. A body at ease colors them with lightness. The self that we experience is always a body self, never detached from its physical ground. The notion of a pure mind, separate from flesh, is an abstraction. In lived reality, awareness is always entwined with bodily being. Movement offers another window into the body-mind connection. Every step, every gesture, Every shift of posture feeds back into awareness. Walking can clear the mind, not by magic, but by rhythmic coordination of body and brain. Gentle exercise can lift mood, not only because of endorphins, but because the body in motion changes the flow of signals reaching the nervous system. Even small shifts, straightening the spine, relaxing the jaw, can alter how consciousness feels. These are reminders that the mind is not only housed in the body, but continually shaped by its actions. The connection also extends to the immune system. In recent years, research has shown how immune signals can influence mood and cognition. Inflammation in the body can bring about fatigue, sadness, or difficulty concentrating. Conversely, states of safety and relaxation can support immune balance. Once again, the message is the same. Awareness is not detached from the body, but interwoven with its every system. Philosophically, the body-mind connection challenges the old view of dualism, the idea that mind and body are separate substances. More recent perspectives suggest that consciousness is embodied through and through. To be aware is not only to think, but to feel, to sense, to inhabit a body. The body is not a vessel that carries the mind, but part of the very texture of awareness. Itself, the way you hold yourself, the way you breathe, the way your body rests. All of these are part of how consciousness unfolds in daily life. This connection is always evident. When you are hungry, your thoughts circle around food. When you are warm and comfortable, your mind feels settled. When you are sick, the world feels heavier. When you are healthy, the world feels lighter. These shifts are not illusions. They are real expressions of the body shaping awareness. To ignore the body is to ignore half of the story of consciousness. From a calm perspective, it is gentle to acknowledge this unity. You do not need to force the body to be perfect, nor the mind to be clear. It is enough to notice that they are partners, always influencing one another. Awareness is not a detached observer, but an embodied presence, carried forward by heartbeat, breath, and sensation. In recognizing this, you may feel a sense of safety. The self is not floating in emptiness, but grounded in the living body. Right now, as you listen, you can notice this connection in yourself. You may feel the weight of your body resting, the rhythm of your breathing, the subtle shifts of temperature on your skin. At the same time, you notice the flow of thought, the gentle reception of words, the openness of awareness. Body and mind are not separate events, but two sides of the same coin. They move together, like inhale and exhale, like night and day. The body-mind connection, then, is not something to be created. It is already here, already complete. To recognize it is to recognize that consciousness is embodied, rooted in flesh and blood, yet capable of reflection, imagination, and depth. The unity of body and mind is not a goal to achieve, but a truth to rest in. And in that resting, you may find a quiet calm, the assurance that awareness is not alone, but held in. The rhythms of the body, supported by breath, anchored in life itself. Consciousness is wide and open, yet within it there is a capacity to highlight certain aspects of experience while letting others fade. This capacity is attention. Attention is the gentle spotlight of awareness, the subtle rhythm that brings one part of the world into clarity while allowing the rest to remain in the background. It is through attention that experience gains shape. Without it, life would be a blur of unfiltered sensation. With it, we notice, reflect, and respond. Attention is often compared to light. Just as a lamp can illuminate one corner of a room while leaving others in shadow, attention can rest on a single sound, a single thought, a single sensation, while countless others remain unnoticed. This does not mean they are absent. They are still there, faint and unobserved, like stars hidden by the brightness of the moon. The shifting of this inner light is what creates the rhythm of conscious life. The brain supports this capacity through networks that coordinate focus. When you listen closely to a voice, neurons in auditory regions synchronize, amplifying the sound while dampening others. When you read, visual regions align with frontal regions that guide comprehension. This selective tuning is not effortful in itself. It unfolds naturally, guided by interest, need, and habit. Attention moves like the tide, sometimes pulled outward by novelty, sometimes flowing inward by reflection. Attention is not only about narrowing, but also about broadening. At times, awareness opens wide, taking in the whole scene without fixating on details. This diffuse mode is equally important, allowing space for creativity, rest, and quiet integration. Just as breath alternates between inhale and exhale, attention alternates between focus and openness. Both are part of the rhythm of life. Without openness, focus becomes rigid. Without focus, openness becomes drift. Together, they balance one. Another dot, we may notice that attention has both voluntary and involuntary forms. Voluntary attention is when you choose to focus, as when reading a book or solving a problem. Involuntary attention is when something captures you without effort. The sudden call of your name, the flash of movement in the corner of your eye. These two forms weave together. You guide attention, but attention also guides you. Consciousness is not only an act of will, but a dance between choice and attraction. The flow of attention also reveals its limits. You cannot attend to everything at once. Even when multitasking, attention shifts rapidly between tasks rather than holding them simultaneously. This limitation is not a weakness, but a feature. It ensures that experience is coherent, that each moment is given depth rather than being drowned in excess. By narrowing, attention allows clarity. By letting go, it allows rest. Emotion strongly shapes attention. Fear sharpens focus on potential. Threat. Joy broadens awareness, making more of the world feel accessible. Interest pulls attention forward. Boredom lets it slip away. In this way, attention is not a neutral mechanism, but part of the felt texture of consciousness. The state of the body, the balance of hormones, the tone of mood, all color how and where attention flows. Memory, too, interacts with attention. What you notice is partly guided by what you have remembered as meaningful. A musician in a busy street may notice the faint tune of a violin where others hear only noise. A parent may pick out the cry of their child among countless voices. Attention is not just directed by the present, but shaped by the history of awareness. What mattered before tends to matter again, creating patterns that guide the spotlight of the mind. Attention is also deeply linked to self-control and intention. The ability to sustain focus on a chosen task gives a sense of agency. Yet, it is gentle to remember that lapses are natural. The mind wanders, focus drifts. This wandering is not failure, but part of the rhythm of consciousness. Moments of drift allow rest, integration, and creativity. Moments of focus bring precision and clarity. The alternation between the two is as natural as the alternation between waking and sleeping. Culturally and historically, attention has been cultivated in many ways. Meditation practices train the ability to hold attention steadily, often by resting it on the breath. Educational traditions emphasize focus on study and concentration. In the modern world, technologies compete for attention, pulling the spotlight in rapid shifts. Yet the essence of attention remains the same. It is the capacity to notice, to hold, and to release. It is not broken by distraction. It is simply fluid, always moving, always returning. Philosophers have observed that attention shapes not only what we experience, but what we consider real. To attend to something is to give it significance. To ignore something is to let it fade. In this way, attention sculpts reality itself. The world you live in is not just what exists outside, but what you have noticed, remembered, and felt. Consciousness is vast, but attention draws its contours, much like breath shapes the voice. From a scientific view, attention can be measured in brain activity, reaction times, and eye movements. But from a lived view, it feels like presence. To be attentive is to be here, fully within the moment, noticing its richness. To lose attention is to drift, carried by thoughts into elsewhere. Both are natural. Both are part of the gentle rhythm of the mind. There is no need to resist either. It is enough to notice how awareness shifts, expands, and contracts. Right now, you may notice your own attention at work. You are following these words, holding their meaning across sentences. At the same time, other sensations, the feel of your body, the rhythm of your breath, are in the background, ready to be noticed if you shift focus. This shifting is effortless. It happens without command. You may rest attention on the words, then allow it to drift to the breath, then back again. This is the living movement of attention, always flowing. The metaphor of breath is useful here. Attention, like breath, cannot be held forever in one state. Inhale gathers, exhale releases. Focus narrows, openness widens. Both are needed, both are natural, both are part of life. To expect permanent focus is like expecting to inhale without ever exhaling. To expect permanent openness is like expecting to exhale without ever drawing breath again. Awareness thrives in balance, in the gentle rhythm of expansion and contraction. So attention is not only a cognitive tool, but also a rhythm of consciousness itself. It highlights, it selects, it gives clarity. It wanders, it releases, it gives. Rest. It is shaped by emotion, memory, and body. It is both voluntary and involuntary, both chosen and given. And in recognizing this, you may feel a quiet reassurance. There is no need to struggle against the natural flow of attention. It is already part of the larger rhythm of life, like tides, like breath, like day and night. Consciousness is not a single, fixed condition. It is more like a spectrum, gently shifting from moment to moment, shaped by the rhythms of the body, the cycles of the day, and the subtleties of inner life. These variations are what we call states of mind. Each state has its own texture, its own quality of awareness. To notice them is to see that consciousness is fluid, not rigid, always present, yet always changing form, like the sky that holds many kinds of clouds, the most familiar. State is ordinary wakefulness. In this state, perception is clear, attention is directed outward, and the body is engaged with the environment. You notice the world around you, respond to its demands, and carry forward tasks and goals. Wakefulness feels stable, yet even here, there are shifts, moments of alert focus, moments of drifting daydreams, moments of quiet reflection. Wakefulness itself is not uniform, but a tapestry of subtle variations. Sleep brings another set of states. In deep sleep, awareness recedes almost entirely. There is little memory of sensation, little sense of self. Yet the body continues to function. The brain continues to cycle, and in this rest, the body repairs itself. In lighter stages of sleep, dreams emerge, as we reflected earlier, carrying fragments of awareness into inner worlds. Sleep shows that consciousness can contract into near silence or expand into vivid imagery, all while the body rests in stillness. Between wakefulness and sleep lies the drowsy state, that threshold when the mind drifts and images appear unbidden. This state, called hypnagogia, can feel both strange and creative. Thoughts loosen their usual order, and the mind becomes more fluid. Many people experience flashes of insight or imagination in this state, precisely because it is less rigid than ordinary wakefulness. The transition into and out of sleep reminds us that consciousness is not sharply divided, but flows across boundaries. Meditative states offer another perspective. Through gentle practices of attention and breath, awareness can shift into calm openness. In some meditations, the mind becomes still, resting on a single object such as the breath. In others, awareness opens wide, observing thoughts and sensations without grasping. These states are often described as peaceful, spacious, and clear. They reveal that consciousness can be trained, softened, and directed, not only left to wander. Meditation demonstrates the plasticity of awareness, its ability to shift into new patterns when guided with care. Trance states are found across cultures. In rituals, music, or dance, awareness may narrow or expand into altered forms. The sense of time may stretch, the sense of self may blur, and ordinary perception may be replaced by heightened imagery. These states are not separate from consciousness, but part of its range. They remind us that awareness is deeply connected to rhythm, sound, and movement, and that culture shapes the ways in which people access these variations. Even within ordinary life, states of mind change with mood, energy, and context. A mind absorbed in joy feels open and bright. A mind burdened by fatigue feels heavy and dim. Stress narrows awareness, relaxation widens it. These shifts happen naturally, without need for control. They are the living pulse of consciousness, shaped by hormones, by neural rhythms, by the body's internal state. Scientific research has mapped some of these states in brain activity. Wakefulness shows fast, complex waves. Deep sleep shows slow, high-amplitude rhythms. REM sleep shows a mixture similar to wakefulness, but with paralysis of movement. Meditation shows patterns of calm synchronization. These findings give external markers of what is felt internally as clarity, stillness, or dream. Yet beyond the data, the experience itself is what matters. The texture of each state is lived from within, not only measured from without. Philosophically, states of mind raise questions about identity. If you are different in waking, dreaming, meditating, or in trance, which is the real self? Perhaps the gentle answer is that all are real. All are facets of the same consciousness. The self is not one state, but the flow through many. Just as the ocean holds both waves and calm depths, consciousness holds both wakefulness and sleep, both focus and drift. Identity is not broken by these changes. It is expressed through them. It is also worth noticing that states of mind are not entirely separate. They overlap and influence each other. A dream may echo into waking thought. Meditation may bring calm into daily life. Stress may intrude into sleep. The boundaries are porous, like colors blending on a canvas. Consciousness flows across them, reminding us that all states are connected in the larger rhythm of awareness. From a gentle perspective, there is no need to judge one state as better than another. Each has its role. Wakefulness allows action. Sleep allows rest. Dreams allow integration. Meditation allows clarity. Even distraction and daydream have their place, giving space for creativity and relief. Consciousness does not need to be forced into a single mode. It is enough to recognize the richness of its states. Right now, you may reflect on your own states. Of mind, recall the feeling of drifting into sleep, the heaviness, and the fading of the world. Recall the freshness of waking, when light returns and awareness widens. Recall moments of focus, when attention narrows, and moments of openness, when everything feels spacious. These are all variations of the same consciousness, the same awareness moving through different forms. The states of mind show that consciousness is not static, but alive. It contracts and expands, sharpens and softens, awakens and rests. It is, carried by the body, shaped by rhythm, colored by emotion. To be aware of these states is to see that consciousness is not fragile but resilient, capable of many forms. And in recognizing this, you may feel a quiet trust. Whatever state arises, it is part of the whole, part of the unbroken flow of awareness. So consciousness is not only a single light, but a spectrum of lights shifting across time. Each state reveals a different aspect, a different shade of being. Together, they form the tapestry of mind, the living range of experience. To rest in this understanding is to see consciousness as both varied and continuous, always changing, always present, always whole. Time is one of the deepest mysteries of consciousness. We live within its rhythm, measure our lives by its passing, and yet what we actually experience is not time itself, but the awareness of change. Consciousness does not grasp clocks or calendars. Directly, what it feels is the unfolding of moments, the gentle succession of experiences that create the sense of past, present, and future. Time, in this sense, is not only an external reality, but an inner construction, woven by awareness. In daily life, time often feels like a flow, moving steadily from one moment to the next. Yet when we look more closely, what we truly notice is the present. The past lingers only as memory, and the future appears only as anticipation. Consciousness is always here, in the present, holding traces of what has been and expectations of what may come. The flow of time is less like a river rushing outside of us, and more like the gentle stitching of memory and anticipation within. Awareness itself. This stitching is continuous. Language, for instance, relies on it. You cannot understand a sentence without remembering the words that came before and expecting the ones that will follow. Even within seconds, consciousness holds fragments together, giving coherence to experience. Without this retention and projection, life would be fragmented, a series of isolated flashes. The sense of time is what turns fragments into flow, giving experience its unity. Yet the experience of time is not fixed. It stretches and contracts, depending on state of mind. When attention is absorbed, hours may pass unnoticed, as if time has collapsed. When waiting in discomfort, minutes may feel heavy and long. Joy can make time feel quick. Sorrow can make it drag. Consciousness bends time, shaping its felt texture. The clock may measure the same duration, but awareness lives it differently. This elasticity is one of the most intimate aspects of time and consciousness. Memory plays a central role here. The richness of memory shapes how long an event feels. In retrospect, a day full of new experiences leaves many traces, and in recollection, it feels long. A day of repetition leaves fewer traces, and in recollection, it feels short. This paradox means that the days that fly by in the moment may later seem expansive, while the days that drag in the moment may later seem thin. Consciousness weaves time not only as it unfolds, but also as it is remembered. Anticipation is the other side of this weaving. We project into the future, imagining what may come. This forward stretch shapes the present as much as memory does. Waiting for something important, time feels heavy with expectation. Looking forward to something joyful, time feels light. Consciousness does not simply live in the now. It stretches forward, filling the present with shades of what is yet to be. In this way, time in consciousness is a field, holding memory behind and anticipation ahead, all anchored in the present. Dreams, too, reveal the strangeness of time in consciousness. In dreams, whole stories may unfold in what seems like minutes of real time. The sense of duration is elastic, sometimes stretched, sometimes compressed. This shows that the experience of time is not rigidly tied to external clocks, but generated by awareness. Even in waking life, this flexibility remains. The felt duration of time is always relative, always shaped by state, mood, and context. Cultures have long reflected on time in consciousness. Ancient philosophies spoke of the eternal present, the timeless awareness beneath change. Modern science studies the brain's mechanisms of timing, the circuits that measure intervals, the rhythms that coordinate action. Yet both perspectives point to the same insight. What we live is not time in itself, but the awareness of change, structured by memory and anticipation. Time is not only external, it is also internal, part of the fabric of consciousness. Attention also shapes the perception of time. When you focus narrowly on details, time may seem to slow, each moment rich and distinct. When attention broadens and drifts, time may seem to pass quickly. Athletes often speak of time slowing during intense moments, as perception sharpens and attention saturates the present. Meditation can also alter time, creating a sense of stillness where moments expand. These shifts remind us that time is not absolute in experience, but relative to the rhythm of awareness that the body participates as well. Biological rhythms, the heartbeat, the breath, the cycles of sleep and wake, provide an inner clock. These rhythms anchor the flow of time in bodily experience. The sense of duration is tied to the tempo of these rhythms. A racing heart makes time feel urgent. Slow breathing makes it feel spacious. The body and consciousness together construct the texture of time, each heartbeat a marker in the flow of awareness. Philosophers have asked whether time exists independently of consciousness. Perhaps the external universe has its own time, measured by physical processes. But for each person, the lived reality of time is inseparable from awareness. You do not experience time outside of consciousness. What you experience is always the present, enriched by memory and anticipation. In this way, consciousness does not just passively register time. It actively creates the felt sense of it. This has implications for the self. Our identity is stretched across time. Memory preserves who we have been. Anticipation projects who we may become. The present self is not isolated, but embedded in this temporal field. The continuity of self depends on the continuity of memory and expectation. Time in consciousness is not only about clocks, but about the story of a life carried forward moment by moment. From a gentle perspective, it is helpful to remember that the pressure of time is not absolute. While the clock ticks with precision, the felt flow of time is fluid. It is enough to notice this flexibility and to rest in it. In moments of calm, time expands. In moments of difficulty, it contracts. Both are natural. Both are part of the rhythm of awareness. To recognize this is to loosen the grip of urgency, to see that time in consciousness is not a rigid master, but a flowing companion. Right now, as you listen, you can notice the weaving of time. The words arrive in sequence, the meaning builds, memory holds the beginning, anticipation awaits the end. Without effort, you are living the flow of time in consciousness. You are not separate from it. You are within it, carried by its current. The clock outside may measure minutes, but what you feel is the rhythm of awareness itself, flowing, stretching, shaping the moment. So time in consciousness is not an object, but a process. It is the stitching of past and future into the present, the elasticity of duration, the rhythm of body and mind. It is both universal and personal, both measured and lived. And in seeing this, you may feel a quiet peace. Time is not something you must chase or control. It is already flowing within you, as natural as breath, as constant as change. To rest in this flow is to rest in the heart of awareness itself. Language is one of the most remarkable features of human consciousness. It is the tool that allows us to name the world, to share our inner life, and to shape our own thoughts. With words, we can recall the past, plan the future, and describe the present. Without words, much of our mental life would remain unarticulated, a swirl of impressions without clear form. Language gives thought structure, and thought gives language meaning. Together, they weave one of the most intimate patterns of awareness. When we think, we often think in words. An inner voice narrates, reflects, and comments as if speaking silently within. This inner speech creates a sense of continuity, linking ideas into sentences, giving them direction. At the same time, language allows us to think abstractly, moving beyond what is immediately present. With words, we can imagine distant places, describe invisible forces, or reason about concepts we cannot see. Language extends the reach of consciousness far beyond the here and now. Yet thought is not limited to words. Infants think before they speak. Musicians think in sound, athletes in movement, artists in images. Much of our mental life is pre-verbal, unfolding in feelings, intuitions, and sensory impressions. Language does not create thought, but refines and organizes it. It is like a net cast into the wide sea of awareness, catching some of its contents while letting others flow through. Thought and consciousness are broader than language, but language gives them clarity, and COMMUNIC, ABILIT, why. The relationship between language and memory is profound. Words allow us to label experiences, making them easier to recall. When you can name an event, you can summon it again. When you cannot find words, the memory often feels vague, harder to grasp. Stories, in particular, shape memory. By narrating events, we turn them into structured recollections, weaving them into identity. In this way, language does not only express memory, but also molds it. The story you tell becomes part of who you are. Language also shapes perception. People who speak different languages often notice different aspects of the world. A language with many words for shades of color may make its speakers more sensitive to those distinctions. A language with grammatical tenses for time may influence how its speakers think about past and future. This does not mean that language determines thought completely, but it does guide attention. Words act like signposts in consciousness, directing awareness toward certain features of experience. Emotion, too, finds its expression in language. Words for feelings give them clarity. To say, "I am sad," or "I am joyful," is to bring a diffuse state into focus. At the same time, speaking about emotions can transform them, easing their intensity. Yet some feelings resist words, remaining ineffable. Language is powerful, but not all-encompassing. It points toward experience, but does not fully capture it. The silence between words, the unspoken sense of being, remains a part of consciousness beyond language. The brain has specialized regions for language, such as Broca's area for production and Wernicke's area for comprehension. Damage to these regions can disrupt speech or understanding, showing how deeply embodied language is. Yet the richness of language goes beyond these areas. It draws on memory, emotion, perception, and motor control. To speak a word is to coordinate breath, muscles, and thought. To understand a word is to link sound with meaning, memory, and context. Language is not a separate module, but a network spread across the whole brain. Culturally, language is the foundation of shared consciousness. Through words, we transmit knowledge, values, and traditions. Stories told across generations preserve collective memory. Laws, poems, songs, and conversations all shape the world we live in together. In this sense, language extends consciousness beyond the individual. It creates a shared space where minds can meet. Without language, each person would remain largely enclosed. With language, we build bridges of meaning across time and space. Philosophers have long debated the role of language in thought. Some argue that we cannot think without words, that language is the structure of thought itself. Others argue that thought precedes language, that words are only expressions of deeper processes. Perhaps the gentle answer is that both are true. Thought exists beyond words, but language enriches it, gives it form, and allows it to be shared. Awareness is like a vast field. Language is the path we trace through it. From a calm perspective, it is helpful to notice the rhythm of language in your own mind. The inner voice rises and falls, sometimes clear, sometimes fragmentary. Words may come quickly, filling awareness, or they may fade, leaving silence. Both are natural. You do not need to silence the voice completely, nor follow it endlessly. It is enough to notice that language is part of consciousness, not the whole of it. Beneath words, there is still awareness, soft, open, and wordless. Right now, as you listen, you are experiencing both language and thought. The words arrive, and you understand them. But understanding is more than words. It is the felt sense of meaning that arises as they unfold. You may also notice thoughts of your own, sparked by these words, drifting in and out. This is the dance of language and thought, weaving together to form the flow of consciousness. Language is powerful, yet gentle. It allows us to reflect, to plan, to connect. It shapes memory and guides perception. It expresses emotion and creates culture. At the same time, thought extends beyond it, reminding us that consciousness is deeper than words. Together, language and thought form a partnership, one giving shape, the other giving substance. Neither is complete without the other dot, so when we reflect on language and thought, we are reflecting on one of the central mysteries of awareness. How can marks on a page or sounds in the air create meaning in a mind? How can thought shape itself into language and return again to thought? The answer may never be fully captured. But what matters is the gentle recognition that words and ideas, sounds, and meanings are part of the flow of consciousness, a flow as natural as breath, as continuous as life itself. When we reflect on consciousness, it is natural to begin with ourselves. We know awareness from within, through the simple fact of being alive and present. Yet humans are not the only living beings on Earth. We share the planet with countless other species, mammals, birds, reptiles, fish, insects, and many more. The question arises gently. Are they conscious too? Do animals also live with awareness, with sensations, with experiences of their own? Science suggests that many animals do indeed have forms of consciousness. Their bodies are equipped with nervous systems. Their behavior shows patterns of choice and learning, and their responses suggest inner states. Of course, their consciousness is not identical to ours. Each species has its own way of sensing the world, its own form of perception. But the presence of awareness, the felt experience of life, seems not to be unique to humans. It appears in different shapes across the spectrum of life. Consider mammals such as dogs or cats. Anyone who has lived with them knows that they respond to affection, display moods, and even dream. Their brains share many structures with ours, including regions for emotion, memory, and decision-making. They show attachment, play, and even grief. These behaviors suggest not only reflexes, but lived experiences. To deny that a dog feels joy when running or sadness when separated would be to ignore the vivid signs of awareness expressed through its actions. Birds, too, show remarkable signs of consciousness. Crows and parrots demonstrate problem-solving skills, tool use, and even forms of communication that hint at complex awareness. They recognize themselves in mirrors, an ability once thought limited to humans and a few great apes. Their songs are not only instinctual, but can be learned, remembered, and modified. In their own way, birds live within a conscious world shaped by flight, sound, and social bonds. Marine animals reveal yet another layer. Dolphins are famous for their intelligence, capable of learning symbols and understanding abstract concepts. They engage in playful behavior, both with each other and with humans. Octopuses, though very different from mammals, display problem-solving and individual personalities. Watching an octopus explore, one senses curiosity, a drive to interact with its environment in more than mechanical ways. These examples remind us that awareness is not tied to a single type of brain, but may emerge wherever life is sufficiently complex. Even simpler animals raise questions. Insects, such as bees, can learn routes, remember locations, and communicate with dances that share information about food sources. Whether their awareness feels like ours, we cannot know. But their behavior suggests some form of inner representation, some way of experiencing the world beyond mere reflex. Consciousness, in this view, may be more widespread than once assumed, appearing in degrees and forms across species. Philosophically, this invites reflection on what consciousness means. If animals feel, even in simple ways, then consciousness is not a rare jewel limited to humans, but a thread woven throughout life. It may vary in depth, richness, and complexity, but its presence is shared. The joy of play in a puppy, the morning cry of an elephant, the careful building of a nest by a bird, all of these suggest not only action, but experience. They suggest that the inner light of awareness shines in many creatures, each in its own way. The study of animal awareness also teaches humility. We cannot step into the mind of a bat, which perceives through echoes, or the mind of a fish, which senses currents through subtle vibrations. Their worlds are different from ours, shaped by senses we can barely imagine. Yet within their worlds, consciousness may be as vivid for them as ours is for us. This reminds us that awareness is not one thing but many, not a single template, but a spectrum of possibilities. From a scientific perspective, researchers look for indicators of awareness. They study behaviors that suggest choice, problem-solving, or self-recognition. They measure brain activity that resembles patterns seen in humans. They observe how animals learn, how they play, how they respond to loss or companionship. Each sign is a window, offering clues about inner life. Though we cannot know with certainty what it feels like to be another animal. The weight of evidence suggests that awareness is widespread. Culturally, humans have long intuited this. Ancient traditions often spoke of animals as fellow beings, sharing the breath of life. Indigenous stories honored the wisdom of animals, seeing them as teachers. Modern ethics increasingly recognizes that animals, being conscious, deserve compassion and respect. To acknowledge animal awareness is to broaden our sense of connection, to see consciousness as a shared fabric rather than an isolated possession. Emotionally, many of us feel this directly. The gaze of a dog, the purr of a cat, the flight of a bird, the play of a dolphin. These encounters stir something in us because they reveal presence. They remind us that we are not alone in having awareness. Other creatures also live in the gentle light of experience, also navigate joy and fear, also inhabit their own worlds of perception. At the same time, it is gentle to recognize that not all life shows the same degree of consciousness. Plants respond to light and touch, but whether they feel is unknown. Simple organisms behave with remarkable complexity, yet their awareness, if present, may be minimal. Consciousness may be graded, ranging from faint glimmers to rich inner landscapes. To reflect on this spectrum is not to diminish any form of life, but to appreciate the diversity of ways in which awareness may appear. Right now, you may reflect on your own encounters with animals. Recall the presence of a companion animal, or the way a bird sang in the morning, or the quiet curiosity of a creature crossing your path. In those moments, you may have sensed awareness looking back at you, a meeting of two streams of consciousness. Such experiences remind us that awareness is not confined to human thought, but part of the larger living world. From a calm perspective, the recognition of animal awareness can bring both wonder and responsibility. Wonder, because it expands our sense of consciousness beyond ourselves. Responsibility, because to recognize awareness is to recognize the capacity for suffering and joy. In this recognition, compassion naturally arises. The more we see consciousness as shared, the more we feel called to treat life with care. So when we speak of animals and awareness, we are not only studying behavior or brain structures. We are acknowledging a truth felt across cultures and confirmed by science, that consciousness is not solitary, but communal, not rare, but abundant. It flows through the living world, varied in form, unified in essence. To rest in this recognition is to feel the quiet kinship of all life, a kinship held in the soft light of awareness, as natural as breath, as enduring as time. The rise of artificial intelligence has brought new urgency to one of the oldest questions. What is consciousness, and can it exist beyond biology? Machines today can process enormous amounts of information, recognize patterns, and even simulate conversation. They can generate images, predict outcomes, and adapt to data. To many observers, this invites a quiet but profound question. Do these machines merely simulate awareness, or could they ever truly possess it? When we compare artificial systems with the human mind, the first thing to notice is their difference in origin. Biological consciousness arises from living cells, from the rhythms of neurons exchanging electrical signals from bodies embedded in the world. Artificial systems, by contrast, are built from silicon circuits, algorithms, and lines of code. They are designed to follow instructions and to optimize outcomes. From the outside, both can produce complex behavior. From the inside, however, we do not know whether artificial systems have any inner light of awareness at all. Artificial intelligence can mimic aspects of human thought. It can answer questions, solve problems, and even create texts that sound reflective. Yet this does not prove consciousness. A calculator produces correct results without awareness of numbers. A self-driving car can navigate traffic without any inner sense of the road. The distinction lies in experience. Humans not only process information, but also feel it. They experience joy, sorrow, surprise, and meaning. Machines, so far as we know, do not. Philosophers often speak of the difference between intelligence and consciousness. Intelligence is the ability to perform tasks, to solve problems, to adapt. Consciousness is the presence of subjective experience, what it feels like to be. A machine may be intelligent without being conscious. It may generate convincing responses while feeling nothing. The inner dimension, the light of awareness, is what remains uncertain. This distinction is central to the mystery of artificial minds. Some argue that consciousness might emerge from complexity itself. If a system becomes intricate enough, with enough interactions and feedback, perhaps awareness will appear. Others are skeptical, suggesting that no matter how advanced a machine becomes, it will remain a simulation of thought without inner life. These views reflect the uncertainty of the question. We cannot yet measure consciousness directly. We can only infer it from behavior and structure. With machines, we lack the ability to look inside and know whether any awareness exists. The debate also raises questions about embodiment. Human consciousness is not only in the brain, but also in the body, shaped by sensation, movement, and emotion. Machines, by contrast, often lack bodies in the biological sense. Even robots with sensors and actuators do not feel hunger, warmth, or fatigue. They do not breathe, heal, or age. This absence of embodied experience may limit the possibility of true consciousness. Awareness seems deeply tied to being alive, to having a body that matters to itself. Without this, machines may lack the grounding of experience. And yet, artificial systems surprise us with their abilities. They learn patterns that were not explicitly programmed, generate creative solutions, and even produce art that moves people. This raises the question, if behavior alone is not proof of consciousness, how can we ever know? After all, we cannot directly access the minds of other humans either. We assume they are conscious because their behavior and biology resemble ours. With machines, the resemblance is weaker, but the question remains open. From a calm perspective, it may be helpful to see artificial intelligence not as a rival to human consciousness, but as a mirror. By building systems that simulate aspects of thought, we learn more about what thought is. By reflecting on what machines can and cannot do, we clarify what makes awareness unique. In this way, artificial minds, whether conscious or not, become part of our exploration of consciousness itself. Culturally, the idea of artificial minds has inspired fascination and caution. Stories of thinking machines appear in myths, literature, and films. Sometimes they are imagined as companions, sometimes as threats. These stories reflect our own hopes and fears about consciousness. We project onto machines the qualities we value in ourselves: intelligence, creativity, freedom, and also the qualities we fear: coldness, control, loss of meaning. The question of artificial minds is therefore also a question about human identity. Ethically, the issue becomes more pressing. If machines were ever truly conscious, they might deserve moral consideration. To ignore their awareness would be to risk harm. But if they are not conscious, then treating them as if they are might create confusion. For now, most researchers agree that artificial intelligence does not have inner experience. It processes, calculates, and generates, but it does not feel. Still, the possibility lingers in imagination. urging us to reflect on the essence of consciousness. Right now, as you reflect, you may notice the uniqueness of your own awareness. You are not only receiving words, but experiencing them. There is a felt sense, a presence, an inner life that is undeniable. Machines may simulate this, but whether they truly live it is unknown. This contrast helps us appreciate the mystery of consciousness more deeply. It is not easily reduced to function or output. It is the quiet fact of being aware, something machines have not yet shown. From a gentle perspective, the question of artificial minds is less about prediction and more about humility. It reminds us that consciousness itself is still a mystery, even in humans. We do not yet know how awareness arises from the brain. To ask whether machines can be conscious is to highlight this gap. The answer may remain uncertain for a long time, but in contemplating it, we deepen our appreciation of the miracle of awareness in ourselves and in other living beings. So artificial minds, whether possible or not, serve as a mirror for reflection. They show us the difference between function and feeling, between output and experience. They remind us that consciousness is not obvious, not guaranteed by complexity alone. And they invite us to treasure the awareness we already know, the gentle presence of being alive. In the end, whether machines ever join this circle of awareness or remain outside it, the mystery remains, and the recognition of our own consciousness grows all the more precious. Among the many questions about consciousness, one shines with particular subtlety. It is the question of qualia, the felt qualities of experience. To see the color red is not only to process a wavelength of light, it is to feel its redness. To taste sugar is not only to detect molecules on the tongue, it is to feel sweetness. To hear a melody is not only to recognize sound frequencies, it is to feel music. These raw feels, these ineffable textures of awareness, are what philosophers call qualia. Qualia are simple and immediate, yet they resist explanation. Science can describe the physical processes that underlie them. It can measure the light that enters the eye, the vibrations that touch the ear, the chemicals that bind to receptors on the tongue. It can trace the neural pathways that process these signals. But what science cannot yet explain is why these processes are accompanied by feeling. Why does light not only enter the eye, but also appear as color? Why does vibration not only move the eardrum, but also appear as sound? This gap is what makes qualia so mysterious. Philosophers sometimes call this the hard problem of consciousness. Easy problems, though still complex, involve explaining how the brain performs functions, how it recognizes objects, how it remembers, how it controls movement. The hard problem is why any of this is accompanied by experience at all. Why is there something it feels like to be conscious, instead of just silent processing? This question remains unsolved, and perhaps unanswerable. Yet contemplating it can deepen our appreciation of awareness. Take the example of color. Physics tells us that red light has a wavelength of about 700 nanometers. Neuroscience tells us that cones in the retina respond to this wavelength and send signals to the brain. Psychology tells us that people consistently identify this color as red. But none of this tells us why red feels as it does. The redness of red is a quality only known from within. No description, no measurement, no formula can capture its essence. This is the core of qualia, the felt aspect that resists being reduced to mechanism. The same is true for pain and pleasure. We can measure nerve signals, identify neurotransmitters, and map brain activity. But the feeling of pain, its sharpness, its unpleasantness, is not contained in the data. The feeling of joy, its warmth, its expansion, is not reducible to molecules. These are lived qualities, accessible only through awareness itself. To be conscious is to be immersed in qualia, moment by moment. Some thinkers argue that qualia may not be as mysterious as they seem. Perhaps they are simply the brain's way of representing information, and we should not expect more. Others argue that qualia are fundamental, not reducible to physical processes, and that they may reveal something basic about reality. Between these views lies a wide field of uncertainty. We do not yet know whether qualia will one day be explained, or whether they will remain an eternal mystery. From a calm perspective, it may help to see qualia not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a reminder of the depth of experience. To taste, to see, to hear, these are not just functions, but felt events. Qualia are what make life vivid. Without them, consciousness would be empty, devoid of texture. They are the colors of the inner world, the tones of the inner music. Whether or not they can be explained, they can be appreciated. Qualia also highlight the privacy of consciousness. You cannot fully know what another person's red looks like, or what sweetness tastes like to them. You can assume it is similar, but you cannot enter directly into their experience. This privacy is not isolation, but uniqueness. Each consciousness carries its own field of qualia, its own palette of feeling. This individuality enriches the tapestry of life, making each being distinct. Interestingly, qualia play a role in debates about artificial consciousness. If a machine processes information but has no qualia, then it may never truly be conscious. If it does, then we would face the profound question of recognizing and respecting its experience. This is why the mystery of qualia matters beyond philosophy. It touches ethics, technology, and our understanding of what it means to be alive. Right now, you can notice qualia in your own awareness. The tone of sound as you listen, the feeling of your body resting, the subtle sense of mood within. These are not abstract ideas. They are direct experiences. They cannot be replaced by description. They are what it is like to be here, now, in this moment. To notice them is to notice the essence of consciousness itself. Philosophers sometimes remind us that qualia may never be captured in words. They are like the taste of fruit. You can describe it endlessly, but only tasting reveals it. Consciousness is full of such tastes, countless small textures that make up the richness of life. Whether or not science ever explains them, the experience itself remains undeniable. So the mystery of qualia is not only a challenge, but also a gift. It keeps consciousness from being reduced to mechanism, reminding us of its depth. It invites humility, wonder, and gratitude. Each moment of color, sound, or sensation is not only information, but also presence. To rest in this recognition is to see that awareness is not flat, but vibrant, not empty, but full. Qualia are the quiet miracle of consciousness, simple, immediate, and endlessly profound. For thousands of years, thinkers have asked what consciousness is and how it fits into the fabric of reality. Science gives us data, but philosophy gives us frameworks of meaning. Theories of consciousness are attempts to map the unknown, to describe what awareness might be, how it arises, and what role it plays. No single theory has solved the puzzle, but each offers a perspective, a way of looking that deepens our understanding. One of the oldest views is dualism, most famously expressed by René Descartes in the 17th century. Dualism holds that mind and body are separate substances. The body is physical, extended in space, while the mind is non-physical, the seat of thought and awareness. This view resonates with our intuitive sense that consciousness feels different from matter. Yet it also raises difficult questions. If mind and body are separate, how do they interact? How can the non-physical influence the physical? These questions have led many philosophers to seek other answers. Materialism offers a contrasting view. According to materialism, consciousness is nothing more than the activity of the brain. Every thought, feeling, and perception is produced by physical processes. On this view, if we could fully understand the brain, we would fully understand consciousness. Materialism aligns with modern neuroscience, which shows strong correlations between brain activity and conscious states. Yet critics argue that materialism struggles to explain qualia, the raw feel of experience. The redness of red, the sharpness of pain, the warmth of joy, these seem to resist reduction to neural signals. Idealism turns the picture upside down. In this tradition, consciousness is not a byproduct of matter, but the foundation of reality itself. The physical world is seen as a manifestation of mind, not the other way around. Philosophers like George Berkeley argued that to be is to be perceived, suggesting that awareness is the primary substance. While this view is less common in modern science, it continues to inspire reflection, especially in spiritual and contemplative traditions. A more moderate view is panpsychism, which suggests that consciousness is a fundamental feature of the universe, present in all things to some degree. On this perspective, even simple particles may have tiny seeds of awareness, which combine in complex systems like brains to create richer forms. Panpsychism avoids the problem of explaining how consciousness suddenly emerges from non-conscious matter by suggesting it was there all along. Yet it also raises new questions. If everything has awareness, why do we not feel the consciousness of stones or atoms directly? In recent decades, scientific theories of consciousness have become more precise. One is the Integrated Information Theory, or IIT, proposed by Giulio Tononi. IIT suggests that consciousness corresponds to the degree of integrated information in a system. The more a system's parts interact in a unified way, the richer its consciousness. On this account, consciousness can be measured in principle, even in non-human systems. The theory is elegant, but critics note that it may assign consciousness to systems that behave in ways we would not intuitively recognize, as aware. Another influential model is Global Workspace Theory, or GWT, associated with Bernard Bars and later developed by Stanislas Dehaene. GWT proposes that consciousness arises when information is broadcast across a global workspace in the brain, making it available to multiple processes such as memory, attention, and decision-making. In this model, unconscious processes remain local, while conscious information becomes global. This theory explains many experimental findings, but still leaves open the question of qualia. Why the broadcasting of information should feel like something. Higher-order theories offer yet another approach. They suggest that consciousness arises when the mind not only processes information, but also represents itself as processing it. In other words, awareness comes from having thoughts about thoughts, perceptions about perceptions. This reflective layer creates the sense of being a subject. Such theories emphasize self-awareness, but they are debated. Do we really need a second-order thought to be conscious? Or is experience already present without reflection? Philosophy of mind also considers functionalism, the idea that what matters is not the substance of the brain, but the functions it performs. If another system, such as a machine, performed the same functions, it might also be conscious. Functionalism aligns with the intuition that consciousness depends on organization rather than material. But again, the challenge is whether function alone explains experience, or only simulates it. Beyond these theories, there are more speculative ideas. Some suggest that consciousness is linked to quantum processes hidden in the depths of the brain. Others suggest that it may be connected to fundamental laws of physics not yet discovered. While these views remain controversial, they show the openness of inquiry. Consciousness continues to resist simple explanation, inviting both rigor and imagination. From a calm perspective, it is useful to see these theories not as final answers, but as windows. Each illuminates one side of the mystery. Dualism emphasizes the distinctness of experience. Materialism grounds consciousness in the physical world. Idealism highlights the primacy of awareness. Panpsychism extends consciousness across nature. Scientific theories map mechanisms and functions. Together, they form a landscape of ideas, none complete, all instructive. It is also gentle to remember that theories are not replacements for experience. We live consciousness directly, not as a hypothesis, but as a reality. Philosophical models help us think, but they cannot capture the full texture of awareness. The redness of red, the warmth of breath, the presence of now, these are not theories, but immediate experiences. Philosophy helps us appreciate them, but they remain beyond description. Right now, as you reflect, you may notice this distinction. You hear words, and theories take shape in thought. But alongside them is the direct feel of being conscious, the awareness that holds the words, the quiet field of experience itself. This field cannot be reduced to theory, yet theories can point toward it. They are like maps of a landscape we already inhabit. So philosophy and theories of consciousness are not about closure, but about opening. They remind us that awareness is still a mystery, inviting reflection from many sides. They show that no single framework has captured it, and perhaps none ever will. But in this diversity of perspectives lies a richness, the recognition that consciousness is too vast for any single definition, too subtle for any single theory. To rest in this recognition is to feel both humility and wonder, and to allow the mystery to remain a source of calm exploration. Throughout history, people have not only studied consciousness scientifically and philosophically, but also approached it through spiritual reflection. Across cultures and centuries, awareness has been described as a sacred presence, a spark of the divine, or the ground of being itself. While the languages differ, the gentle theme is the same. Consciousness is more than function. It is something profound, perhaps infinite, perhaps at the heart of existence. In Indian traditions, consciousness is often described as Atman, the inner self, eternal and unchanging. In texts such as the Upanishads, awareness is not seen as a byproduct of the body, but as the essence of the individual, identical with Brahman, the ultimate reality. Meditation practices in yoga and Vedanta invite the practitioner to rest in pure awareness, to see that beneath thoughts and sensations, there is a still witness. This view suggests that consciousness is not limited but boundless, not temporary but timeless. Buddhist traditions approach consciousness differently, often avoiding the idea of a permanent self. Instead, they speak of vijnana, the stream of awareness that arises and passes moment by moment. In mindfulness practice, one observes sensations, thoughts, and feelings as transient, without clinging to them as I or mine. Here, consciousness is seen as a process, empty of fixed essence yet luminous in its clarity. The spiritual insight is not into permanence, but into impermanence, showing how awareness itself can bring freedom when recognized as fluid and open. In Christian mysticism, consciousness is often framed as the soul's awareness of God. Contemplative practices such as prayer and silence are ways of attuning to the divine presence. The 14th century text, The Cloud of Unknowing, speaks of entering into darkness, beyond concepts, where the soul meets God not through thought, but through direct awareness. Here, consciousness is sacred not because it is human, but because it is a place of encounter, a space where the divine and the human meet. Islamic mysticism, or Sufism, speaks of awareness of the heart. Through practices of remembrance, recitation, and music, Sufis aim to dissolve the ego and rest in the presence of the divine. Consciousness is described as a mirror that reflects God when polished of distractions. In this view, the purpose of awareness is not only to know the world, but to return to the source of all being. The inner light of consciousness is seen as a reflection of the eternal. Indigenous traditions also speak of consciousness in expansive ways. Many see awareness as not confined to humans, but shared across animals, plants, and even the land. Rituals of connection remind participants that the world itself is alive, that awareness is woven through all things. Consciousness is not only individual but communal, not only mental but environmental. The self is understood as part of a larger web of life, and awareness is the thread that connects it. What unites these spiritual views is the sense that consciousness is more than a private mental function. It is a doorway, an opening into something greater. Some traditions emphasize unity, the oneness of all awareness. Others emphasize emptiness, the absence of fixed identity. Others emphasize relation, awareness as encounter with the divine or with the living world. In every case, consciousness is seen as profound, mysterious, and deeply significant. From a modern perspective, we may approach these traditions with curiosity rather than judgment. One does not need to adopt a particular belief to appreciate the insights they offer. Meditation, prayer, chanting, and ritual are not only spiritual practices, but also ways of exploring consciousness directly. They change attention, emotion, and perception. They reveal new textures of awareness. Whether interpreted spiritually or psychologically, they expand our sense of what consciousness can be. It is gentle to notice that spiritual traditions often describe states of consciousness that go beyond ordinary wakefulness. Mystical experiences are reported across cultures. Feelings of unity, of timelessness, of boundless love, of dissolution of the self. These experiences are difficult to express in language, yet they are deeply transformative. They suggest that consciousness is capable of modes beyond the everyday, reaching into dimensions that feel infinite or sacred. Philosophically, such accounts raise questions. Are these states glimpses of a deeper reality, or are they constructions of the brain under special conditions? Science may explain them in terms of neural activity, while spirituality interprets them as encounters with the divine. Perhaps both views have value. From the perspective of experience, what matters is that such states are real to those who live them. They reveal possibilities of awareness beyond the ordinary. Right now, as you reflect on spiritual views of consciousness, you may notice a quiet shift in your own awareness. Words about unity, light, or emptiness may evoke a sense of openness. You may feel a subtle spaciousness, a reminder that consciousness is not only functional, but also profound. Whether you interpret this spiritually or simply as a quality of mind, it shows that awareness has depth beyond the surface. From a calm perspective, spiritual views are not demands but invitations. They invite us to see consciousness not only as brain activity, not only as thought, but as mystery. They remind us that awareness may be larger than we imagine, that it may connect us to others, to nature, or even to the infinite. Whether one embraces these views literally or symbolically, they encourage humility and reverence. So spiritual views of consciousness are part of the long story of reflection on awareness. They stand alongside science and philosophy, offering another dimension of understanding. They may not provide final answers, but they offer depth, pointing toward the sacredness of being aware. To rest in this perspective is to see consciousness as not only ordinary, but extraordinary, not only human, but universal. In this recognition, awareness itself becomes a source of wonder, a quiet light that has guided humanity for millennia. When we ask about consciousness, we are asking one of the deepest questions that human beings have ever faced. What is awareness? How does it arise? What is its place in the universe? Across centuries, philosophers, scientists, and spiritual teachers have offered answers. Yet despite all progress, there remain boundaries we cannot cross. The study of consciousness leads us into the mystery of the limits of knowing. One of the clearest limits is the privacy of experience. You know your own consciousness directly, but you cannot step inside another person's mind. You can observe their behavior, listen to their words, measure their brain activity. But the actual feel of their experience, the redness of their red, the sharpness of their pain, the warmth of their joy, is closed to you. This privacy is not a flaw, but a feature of consciousness. It ensures that each life is unique. But it also marks a boundary. We cannot know other minds from the inside. We can only trust, infer, and empathize. Another limit is the hard problem of consciousness, the puzzle of why physical processes should be accompanied by experience at all. We can map the brain in extraordinary detail, identifying circuits for memory, attention, and emotion. But none of this tells us why those circuits feel like anything from within. Why is there something it is, like to be alive, rather than only mechanical activity? Some suggest this problem may never be solved because experience cannot be reduced to mechanism. It can only be lived. Time and again, we encounter questions that stretch beyond science. Is consciousness fundamental to the universe, or only a property of brains? Is awareness eternal, or does it vanish when the body dies? Are altered states glimpses of deeper truths, or simply brain phenomena? Science can describe patterns, but ultimate answers may remain beyond reach. The mystery of consciousness may not be fully dissolvable into explanation. This does not mean we know nothing. Much has been discovered about correlations between brain and mind. We understand how perception works, how memory shapes self, how attention guides awareness. These discoveries expand knowledge and improve life. Yet the essence, the inner feel, remains elusive. The limit is not in our curiosity, but in the nature of the subject. Consciousness is both the tool of knowing and the object to be known. Trying to fully explain it is like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. Philosophers remind us that limits are natural. Human knowledge has always grown within boundaries. We can measure stars, but not fully imagine infinity. We can describe atoms, but not see their dance directly. Consciousness belongs to the same category. It can be studied, described, and modeled, but perhaps never captured in full. The limit may not be a barrier to progress, but a horizon, always receding as we approach. There is also the limit of language. Words can point toward awareness, but never exhaust it. You can describe the taste of fruit endlessly, but the taste itself must be experienced. You can define color in terms of wavelength, but the redness of red cannot be given in words. Language gestures toward qualia, but qualia remain beyond description. This gap between words and experience is another gentle limit, reminding us that some truths are lived rather than spoken. Culturally, the recognition of limits has inspired humility. Mystical traditions often emphasize the cloud of unknowing, the recognition that ultimate reality cannot be grasped by intellect alone. Modern science, too, acknowledges uncertainty, using models that are always provisional, always open to revision. In both cases, the boundary of knowledge is not a failure, but an invitation to wonder, to reverence, to openness. Psychologically, accepting limits can bring peace. Much anxiety arises from the desire to control, to know everything, to master every mystery. But awareness does not require complete understanding. It is enough to live it, to experience it directly. A mind that accepts not knowing finds rest. The horizon of mystery becomes not a threat, but a comfort, like the soft darkness of night holding the stars. Right now, you can notice this directly. You are aware, yet you cannot fully explain what awareness is. You can reflect on its features, trace its functions, explore its states. But the essence, the presence of consciousness itself, remains beyond capture. Instead of resisting this, you can rest in it. To be conscious of not knowing is itself a profound form of knowing. It is the recognition of mystery, the gentle acceptance of limits from a calm perspective. Limits of knowing are not walls, but horizons. They mark the edges of thought, the places where explanation gives way to wonder. They remind us that consciousness is not a problem to be solved, but a presence to be lived. To acknowledge the limits is not to give up, but to open. It is to see that mystery is part of life, not something separate from it. So when we reflect on the limits of knowing, we are not facing defeat, but touching the essence of awareness. We are reminded that consciousness is both familiar and unknowable, both intimate and infinite. To rest in this recognition is to find humility, to release the need for total mastery, and to embrace the gentle truth that some mysteries are meant to remain. And in that acceptance, awareness becomes not only an object of study, but also a source of peace, a quiet presence beyond explanation, as natural as breath, as enduring as life itself. When we look at the night sky, we are reminded of the vastness of the cosmos. Billions of stars shine in every direction. Galaxies stretch across unimaginable distances, and space expands into horizons we cannot reach. And yet, in this immensity, here we are, conscious beings, aware of the very universe that gave rise to us. This simple fact is extraordinary. Matter has arranged itself into patterns so complex that they can reflect upon the whole. Consciousness is the cosmos becoming aware of itself. Some thinkers see consciousness as a rare phenomenon, emerging only under the right biological conditions. On this view, the universe is mostly silent and unconscious, with awareness flickering briefly in places where brains evolve. In this vast darkness, consciousness is like a candle flame, fragile and temporary. Yet others suggest a more expansive perspective, that consciousness may not be an isolated accident, but a fundamental aspect of the universe itself, woven into its fabric as surely as space and time. Modern cosmology tells us how stars formed, how galaxies cluster, how planets emerge. Biology tells us how life evolves, how nervous systems develop, how brains give rise to behavior. But neither fully explains why any of this should feel like something from within. The appearance of consciousness in a universe of matter remains one of the deepest mysteries. It invites reflection. Is awareness simply a late arrival in cosmic history, or has it been present in some subtle way all along? Panpsychist philosophies lean toward the latter. They suggest that consciousness, in some primitive form, might be present in all matter, from the smallest particle to the largest structure. If so, the universe is not dead, but alive with awareness, each system carrying a spark of inner being. On this view, human consciousness is not the beginning of awareness, but its flowering into complexity. The cosmos does not become conscious only in us. Rather, we are one expression of a consciousness that runs through everything. Other perspectives emphasize emergence. They see consciousness as arising only when matter organizes into complex networks, such as brains. In this view, the cosmos is not conscious as a whole, but in certain places on Earth, perhaps elsewhere, matter has become intricate enough to support awareness. Consciousness, then, is rare but real, a remarkable outcome of natural processes. The universe is mostly silent, but in some places it sings. Spiritual traditions often take a more expansive stance. Many describe consciousness as infinite, as the ground of being from which the cosmos arises. Some see the universe itself as a mind, with all beings as expressions within it. Others speak of unity, where the boundary between self and cosmos dissolves. Whether taken literally or metaphorically, these views highlight the sense that awareness and existence are deeply intertwined. From a calm perspective, it is helpful not to rush to answers, but to rest in the wonder of the question. Consciousness and the cosmos are both vast mysteries, each reflecting the other. The cosmos shows us immensity, order, and beauty. Consciousness shows us presence, experience, and meaning. Together, they form the two horizons of human reflection, the outer horizon of the universe and the inner horizon of awareness is also a practical dimension. Our awareness allows us to study the cosmos, to build telescopes, to map galaxies, to trace the history of stars. Without consciousness, the universe would remain unobserved, unreflected. With it, the universe comes into presence, at least for us. This suggests that consciousness is not only part of the cosmos, but also its witness. Through us, the cosmos contemplates itself. Right now, you can notice this directly. As you imagine stars, galaxies, and space, they appear within your awareness. The cosmos is not only out there, it is also here, present as an image in consciousness. In this sense, awareness contains the universe as much as the universe contains awareness. The two are not opposed, but intertwined, one reflecting the other in quiet symmetry. Philosophers sometimes call this the anthropic perspective. It reminds us that any reflection on the universe is already shaped by the fact that we are here, conscious and capable of asking. Perhaps countless lifeless worlds exist, but we reflect from one that gave rise to life and mind. Our presence is not an accident, but a condition for reflection itself. We cannot step outside consciousness to study the cosmos objectively. We are always part of the picture. Astrobiology raises further questions. If consciousness arose here, might it arise elsewhere? Are there other beings on other planets who also look at the stars and wonder? We do not yet know, but the possibility expands our imagination, reminding us that consciousness may not be unique to Earth. The cosmos is vast, and awareness may bloom wherever the conditions allow. Yet even if humanity were alone, the significance of consciousness would remain. A universe without awareness would be indifferent, unknowing. With awareness, even in one place, the universe gains presence, beauty, and meaning. The stars shine regardless, but it is consciousness that allows them to be seen, felt, and understood. This partnership between cosmos and awareness is profound. It makes existence not only a fact, but an experience. From a calm perspective, reflecting on consciousness and the cosmos brings humility. We are small in scale, yet vast in significance. We are tiny beings on a single planet, yet carriers of awareness that can embrace galaxies in thought. The cosmos gave rise to us, and through us, it contemplates itself. This is not a matter of pride, but of awe. To be aware, even briefly, in such a universe is extraordinary. So when we speak of consciousness in the cosmos, we are speaking of two great mysteries meeting. The vastness of the external universe and the intimacy of inner awareness are not separate but entwined. Each gives depth to the other. To look outward is to reflect inward. To look inward is to sense the cosmos reflected there. And in this gentle symmetry lies a truth. Consciousness is the universe aware of itself, and the cosmos is the field in which consciousness blooms. Thank you for joining the Sleepy Brain Dose in this gentle journey through the wonders of the mind. May these calm reflections on consciousness, memory, and dreams stay with you as you drift into peaceful sleep. Subscribe to return for more quiet explorations of science whenever you seek rest and calm.